Hey, Molly, thanks so much for being here. We're doing these stay interviews to identify millennials who were in roles for 4 or 5 plus years and what made them stay. So you were recently at a role for what, 6 plus years? Was it even more? Tell me about that. Tell me how long you were there, why you stayed. And yeah, feel free to be as concise or as long-winded as you want.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I was with the same company from 2014 till January of this year. So almost 8 years. I think it was like 7.5. So a long time. It was pretty much the only company I'd ever worked for, really. So I think there's a couple reasons that I stayed. I think one, I was laid out a very clear advancement path when I first started. It was kind of, this is what you have to do, and this is what you'll get if you do those things. And I like feeling like it's something that I can attain easily. So that helped me a lot. And then hitting those goals and being able to advance and actually living what they preached was awesome as well. I think another thing is just I was empowered a lot. I was empowered to make decisions when I was brand new, whether it was where should the team go to lunch, like something super,
Yeah.
It might feel silly at the time, but something small. And then by the end, making a lot bigger decisions really just made me feel really confident in myself and confident in my abilities. And I think that was a huge reason. I just felt like I could own what I was doing. And then another thing was travel. I was young. I didn't have a family at the time, and I got to travel all over the country, to Mexico, got to do more tropical, vacations as well. And I was gone all the time. And that's what I wanted to do at that age. I wanted to be able to explore and meet different people and go to new places. And I got to do that. And that's, again, something that I was told when I started was, if you do this, you can do X, Y, and Z. Being able to, again, live out what was set as an expectation at the beginning was huge. So I think to kind of encompass all of that, a lot of it was just, they set expectations when I first started, and then they also followed through with them as the years went on. So those are kind of the reasons that I've decided to stay.
That's awesome. You brought up an interesting point with the being able to decide lunch. There's something to be said about autonomy where you can just kind of make your own decisions and do things your own way. But then there's a whole nother layer to it when your idea or your preference is actually implemented for the whole team. Like, how empowering did that feel? I mean, it's kind of unheard of to come in as a new team member and just be able to like make decisions that the entire team is on board with.
Yeah, no, I mean, it felt really good. And later down the line, I actually learned that it was a leadership tactic that they implemented, and it was called like tree decision. So it started off with a leaf decision. So you give your people like little tiny decisions. And if they decide, something wrong with that decision, it's not a big deal. Like a tree loses hundreds of thousands of leaves every year. So if a leaf falls off, it is what it is, you know what I mean? And then they start giving you like bigger decisions. They called it a branch decision. Okay, you've made a ton of these small decisions. Now let's start making bigger ones, because if the whole branch falls off, like the tree's not going to die, but it might look a little funky without its left branch. And then as you stay longer, you can make bigger decisions, which they called just whole tree decisions. Now, if a whole tree falls down, it's kind of a big deal. So like they start giving you decisions that are even bigger. So I think as somebody coming in and hearing that, it also gets you excited. Like, okay, if I get to make these small decisions at first, and then I do really well with those, or I don't, because it's just a leaf. It's not a big deal if I pick a lunch place that ends up being really bad. We just won't go back. You know what I mean? So it also makes me feel like it's okay to fail. It's not a problem. Like, we can always fix it moving down the line. So I also think it gets you excited to be able to make those decisions, because they open the door for failure. And I think that's something that I enjoyed as well. I was just a college student that had no experience coming out of playing a lot of sports. So it was nice to know that just like in sports, you can fail and fix it and move forward. It was the same thing in like the business and career field as well.
That is so cool. I think we're going to have to use that like tree. You have to remind me of what it's called, or I'll go back, just as we kind of illustrate some examples, like how do you put this into practice, or what does this look like? What's a leadership tactic for that? What's a way that you can implement that in your culture? That is so cool. I've never heard that before. Okay, cool. Well,
I love that.
Yeah. Wow. I'm like, have I been making branch decisions already? Like, that's pretty cool. So
makes you think about it.
Yeah. We're going to transition into Nectar's framework called Create. So we strongly believe that culture has to be created within a company. So our kind of 6 pillars are an acronym that spell CREATE. So I'm going to go through the 6 pillars. And if there are any that stand out to you that were a reason that you stayed, if you could just elaborate a little bit more on those, tell a story, something like that, and then we'll wrap it up. So we've got connection, recognition, empathy, alignment, trust, and elevation are the 6 pillars.
So I would say there's definitely a couple. So I think the first one, just recognition. So when I first started recruiting, and kind of similar to sports, they always put your numbers and everything on the wall. And I liked that even when I was really bad, just because I was like, okay, these are the people that are doing really well. So I can go just figure out why are they so much better than me. But then, I did start doing better and I did start doing well. I did feel really well recognized, whether it was the annual conferences that we had or just from the manager I was working or the team that I was working with at the time. We actually did this big recruit, I think it was called the World Series of Recruiting. So it was around the time, actually this time of year, I'm assuming, since the World Series is going on. And basically they gave us certain goals to hire a certain amount of people, but they also wanted us to hire quality, right? The whole point is to get people to stick around. So you got points for certain things, and the winner at the end, their team got $30,000 bonus. So when they told me and the person that I worked with, we were like, all right, that would be cool. Let's go win this competition. And at the end, when you get recognized in front of all these people, recruiters typically don't get a lot of recognition. So standing in front of thousands of people, being looked at as these 2 people that did, so much for their team was awesome. A position that it was really cool to be in. I think the next one would probably be elevation. I was always being pushed to elevate my skill sets and elevate what I was doing. And I also did the same thing with my team. I always talk to them how they could be a little bit better every week. We always use them. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of the slight edge theory. So every day you want to work on one thing, and by the end of the year, you're 365% better than you were at the beginning of the year. So that was always something we focused on. So we did book clubs, we did podcasts, we did weekly just development meetings as a team. So I think if I had to pick, those recognition and elevation would probably be the 2 that were big reasons why I stayed as well.
Awesome.